Finkenauer, Hurst, Kraus, and Mulbauer, they're all in this race for the U.S. Senate Democratic primary next year. And so is Michael Franken. He's a retired Navy vice admiral. He finished second in the U.S. Senate Democratic primary last year, lost to Theresa Greenfield. This time he's thinking ahead to Chuck Grassley.
Iowans will agree that it's a difficult world, and we're a divided nation. I was fortunate enough to have experiences that are relative and would serve this state and its citizens quite well in the U.S. Senate. And ultimately, I have this compulsion to serve and to lead people. It's a servant leadership issue. And I think this is the time to do this. It must be done. And if not me, who?
I'm curious, after when you ran last time, you finished second in the primary. When that was finished,
yeah.
Do you remember your mindset back then? Some people I've talked to over the years think, there is no way I'm ever going to touch this again. Other people say, I like this, I can do even better. Which one were you?
More than likely the former. And, but I expected things to be more settled after the 2020 election. And I didn't see that to be the case. As a matter of fact, I think the division, although there's been bleed over in the parties, et cetera, I believe the division is still substantial. And the world is such that in a post-pandemic environment, it requires experience and it requires people who understand and go to Washington on day one, able to lend their support and be movers and doers.
One of the things you talked about last time was your frustration with outside groups getting involved with this and getting behind Theresa Greenfield, right? Well, we're seeing some of that very early on with Abby Finkenauer, and even Congresswoman Sidney Axne already endorsed her. Does that annoy you again?
Some of it is expected. The good news is the corporate Democrats, the DSCC, the DNC, et cetera, have decided to stay out of the primaries. So saith the rumors and the conversations I've had. More importantly, the advocacy groups are generally released to support the candidate that they choose. That's good for me, for the raft of organizations that I would be a very good representative of. So, you know, I think people have to do local politics, and there's relationships that they have to abide by, and consequently you can expect some of that. Ultimately, it's the voter that counts. And you know, as a wise person once said about endorsements, you can have 50 endorsers on a page, but if it's that one person who ran over your dog, then suddenly, or something to that effect.
But sometimes those groups can bring a heck of a lot of money to a race, right?
That is true.
That's a lot to go up against.
That is true. So swinging behind the pitch, coming in late with money, and that has to be rectified.
Hey, let's talk about that a little bit. You were dealing with some health stuff over the summer that you had to work your way through.
Yeah.
How you doing? How you feeling?
Good. The bad news is I can't dunk the ball unless you move the net down.
But all good.
Yeah.
No concerns, because you know, health is a big thing that anybody has to consider, and your family has to consider.
I would not have entered this race if I wasn't sure that I was in for the long haul, physically and mentally.
And do you want to talk about it or not?
No, not really.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of the issues that we are seeing right now. John Deere strike.
Yeah.
In your mind, what is that all about, and how does this get resolved?
Well, I was on the line on Saturday, spoke to the workers, including generational workers, mom, son, that sort of thing, which is heartwarming because, you know, we're all homesteaders and farmers in Northwest Iowa. You know, I think the precursor of this is, I mean, the intricacies of the contract. A 5% increase early on in a length of period of time, when balanced against inflation, is actually a pay cut. And if we work defense budgets like that, the defense industry would howl. And
now, in normal times, though, 5% raise far outpaces inflation, though. You agree, right?
Sure.
For a yearly increase.
But we can expect it's going to be, what, 5.4 in 2021? It's 3.5 5 or so, and you can expect maybe 2 in 23. Consequently, you're now getting less than what you had before from a purchasing parity perspective. So there's that. There's also a corporation that's done extremely well. And listen, I love John Deere products. I grew up in a machine shop working on them. Somebody told me the other day that we can no longer work on them because you've got to have some kind of
all
contract.
computers.
Yeah, I don't know, but we fixed loaders and discs, et cetera, in my dad's shop, and they were always considered the creme de la creme of equipments, and that's because of their good workers. Let's face it, good design, good workers, good material. So I think they wanted a piece of the action of a company whose stock has gone appreciably higher and reflective in their chief executive officer pay and other officers of the corporation.
What are you seeing in the workforce right now? There are some who talk about that this is almost kind of the time of the worker. Workers pushing back for raises in the past that they felt were inadequate. Clearly there is a demand for workers right now. You see some older folks who have left the workforce because of COVID reasons or child care or taking care of somebody, whatever it is. Where does this go?
I've read a couple of studies on this. I think we are somewhere from about 7% up to 15% short on workers. Consequently, supply and demand, I would expect wage growth. I would expect some organizations will look for some automation means, alternate means of doing things. I have a daughter who works for Amazon where they don't use checkouts in a grocery store. I think we'll see more of that. Ultimately, we can expect in the state of Iowa self-driving trucks coming through. We can expect, a whole host of things coming down the pike. But ultimately, in the short term, we're going to have wage growth. And this is an opportunity for perhaps for unions to demand more of the profits.
The Republicans are blaming President Biden for inflationary pressure. Things are costing more than they did a year ago. Fair or unfair?
Well, so energy is a big aspect of that. Energy is a worldwide market. It isn't at the pump from the White House. It is a worldwide issue. It's a slurry of price movements. That's not Biden's action. There is a stack up of commodities at the ports. There's a container issue. There's shipping issues because we got rid of some ships in the interim. There's a host of issues. I believe it's overdue to increase the stevedores and the longshoremen to work and get moving. Ultimately, I would like to see the train activity increase in the United States to move commodities in and out. There's things they can do. I don't think this is the president's thing, and it's not a millstone that should be hung on around his neck.
What about those who are complaining about the president's push for vaccine mandates to push against COVID-19? You're also seeing some private employers also requiring that on their own. Is that the best way to protect people, or should that be left to an individual?
Well, asking a former military person.
You had quite a few immunizations.
I wonder how many, but I still have my shot card. I carry my shot card. I carry it inside one of my passports all times. Because it's germane, and so all for one and one for all. The individual desires, especially when your individual desires are based on some rather fuzzy science, and don't get me going with some of the wackadoodle studies that are involved in this. But
for those who oppose
who oppose the vaccines, there are some people have some physical issues that justify it. I got it, 100%. But in the military, in the emergency services, those who are essential services, of course, the community writ large is more important than the individual's desires, and this is part of being a community.
Let's close with Senator Grassley.
Yes.
Your ultimate hope is to take him on one-on-one, November of 2022. A man who's had this job for a long, long time and wins comfortably. Why would that be different if you are the nominee on the ballot versus those who have tried and failed in the past?
Well, thank you for asking that. I think that's the real question of the day, and it's why I'm one of the reasons I entered this race. I believe the independents and the Democrats in Iowa believe that the winner of the Democrat primary must win that general election. And to do so, you need a percentage of the Republicans who believe that it's time to move on. You need some 70% of the independents who believe that it's now okay to vote for a Democrat in place of this person, because he's not the folksy fella who worked both sides of the aisle that got him elected decades ago. He's not that. I mean, we saw that on the stage here 2 weeks ago. And lastly, the Democrats will acknowledge that issue and will push that person through the primary into the general election, where you win going away. This isn't that close. Consider 5 to 8 points. It's a numbers issue.
Two political figures to watch in the Insider's Quick Six next.